The rain came down in sheets, blurring the world into a haze of gray and desperation. Eli's knees buckled, his body slumping against the cold brick wall of the alley, blood seeping through his fingers as he clutched his side. Sam's voice, raw and breaking, cut through the storm. "Stay with me. Ella, don't you dare give up now." They weren't supposed to end like this. Not here. Not in this forgotten corner of a small Ohio town where dreams went to die. Eli had always believed their love could outrun the hate, the whispers, the fists that followed them like shadows. But now, with the world fading at the edges and Sam's hands trembling as they pressed against his wound, Eli wasn't so sure. It had started with two boys in a high school hallway. One a quiet artist with paint-stained fingers. The other a defiant dreamer with a crooked smile that hid 1,000 scars. Eli, the artist, had been sketching in the margins of his notebook when Sam, the new kid with a leather jacket and a reputation for trouble, leaned over and said, "You draw like you're afraid someone's gonna see." That was the spark. A challenge. A connection. A collision neither could walk away from. Their town wasn't kind to boys like them. Springdale, Ohio, was all picket fences and church suppers. But beneath the surface, it simmered with judgment. Eli's parents quoted scripture at him when they caught him staring too long at Sam during Sunday service. Sam's foster dad, a man with fists like sledgehammers, didn't need a reason to swing. Just the suspicion that Sam wasn't normal was enough. But Eli and Sam found refuge in stolen moments, late-night drives in Sam's beat-up Chevy, kissing under the cover of fireflies, whispering promises in the abandoned barn at the edge of town. They dreamed of escape. New York, maybe, or San Francisco, somewhere they could be themselves without fear. Eli would sell his paintings. Sam would write poetry. And they'd build a life where no one could touch them. But dreams don't survive long in a place like Springdale. The first crack came when Eli's older brother, Caleb, saw them holding hands by the river. Caleb, with his football hero swagger and a heart full of resentment, didn't hesitate to spread the word. By Monday, the whispers had turned to slurs, scrawled across Eli's locker in black marker. Sam took it harder than Eli. "We don't owe them anything," he'd said, his voice fierce as he scrubbed the words off with his sleeve. But Eli saw the hurt in his eyes, the way Sam's shoulders tensed every time they passed a group of kids snickering. Eli wanted to protect him, to wrap him in the kind of love that could shield them both from the world. But love, he was learning, wasn't always enough. The night everything shattered started like any other. They'd snuck out to the barn, their sanctuary, where Eli had been painting a mural on the rotting wood, a vibrant swirl of blues and golds, their future in color. Sam was reading aloud from a dog-eared book of poetry, his voice soft and steady, when headlights cut through the darkness. Caleb and his friends, drunk on cheap beer and righteous anger, had followed them. "You think you can just flaunt this?" Caleb had sneered, his voice thick with disgust. Eli stepped in front of Sam, heart pounding, but Sam pushed him back, always the protector. The fight was quick and brutal. Fists flew, and Eli's world narrowed to the sound of Sam's gasps, the crack of knuckles against bone. He didn't see who pulled the knife, only felt the sharp, searing pain as it tore into his side. Now, in the alley where they'd fled, Eli's vision swam. Sam was kneeling beside him, his hands slick with blood as he pressed against the wound. "You're gonna be okay," Sam whispered, but his voice cracked, betraying the lie. The rain mixed with tears on his face, and Eli wanted to reach up, to wipe them away, but his arms felt like lead. "I'm sorry," Eli managed, his voice barely a whisper. He'd always thought he'd be braver in a moment like this, but all he felt was regret for the life they hadn't lived, for the promises they'd made but couldn't keep. Sam shook his head, his jaw tight. "Don't you dare apologize. You're my everything. Eli. You hear me? We're getting out of this." But Eli could feel the cold creeping in, the world growing quieter. He thought of the mural in the barn, unfinished, a testament to a love that had burned bright but not long enough. He thought of Sam's crooked smile, the way it felt to be held by someone who saw him, truly saw him, in a world that refused to. "Sam," he whispered, his hand fumbling for Sam's. "If I don't." "No." Sam cut him off, his voice fierce. "You don't get to say that. You're not leaving me." But the darkness was closing in, and Eli's grip on Sam's hand was slipping. He wanted to tell Sam to run, to live, to carry their love somewhere safe. But the words wouldn't come. All he could do was hold on, for as long as he could, to the boy who'd made him believe in a world worth fighting for. Sam's hands shook as he pressed harder against Eli's wound, the rain washing blood in rivulets down his wrists. The alley felt like a cage, the walls closing in as Eli's breathing grew shallower. "Stay with me," Sam pleaded, his voice a raw, desperate prayer. He could hear the distant wail of sirens, but they were too far, too late. He'd always been the strong one, the one who took the hits so Eli wouldn't have to. Growing up in foster homes, Sam had learned to build walls around his heart, to fight back when the world tried to break him. But Eli had slipped past those walls, with his quiet courage and paint-splattered hands. And now Sam was terrified of losing the only person who'd ever made him feel whole. The night replayed in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Caleb's voice, slurred and venomous, as he and his friends cornered them in the barn. The glint of the knife in the moonlight. Eli's cry as he fell, blood blooming across his shirt. Sam had fought back, his fist connecting with Caleb's jaw, but it wasn't enough. They'd run, stumbling through the woods, until they reached this Aaliyah dead end in every sense. Sam pressed his forehead to Eli's, their breaths mingling in the cold air. "You remember that night by the river?" he whispered, trying to keep Eli with him. "You said you'd paint the stars for me. You still owe me that." Eli's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "You'd complain about the colors," he murmured, his voice faint but warm with affection. Sam laughed, a broken sound that hurt his chest. "Damn right I would. You'd make him all blue." He kept talking, anything to keep Eli's eyes open, to keep him here. He told him about the apartment they'd get in New York, with a window big enough for Eli to paint by, where Sam could write poetry without hiding. He talked about the life they'd promised each other, even as he felt Eli slipping away. The sirens grew louder, and Sam's heart leapt with fragile hope. "They're coming. Eli. Just hold on." He looked down at the boy he loved, at the way Eli's lashes fluttered against his pale cheeks, and something inside him broke. He'd spent his life running from foster homes, from judgment, from himself. But he couldn't run from this. "Sam," Eli whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. You're enough. Always were." The words hit Sam like a punch, stealing his breath. He wanted to scream, to beg Eli to fight. But he could see the truth in Eli's eyes, the quiet acceptance, the love that hadn't dimmed even as the light in him faded. Sam pressed his lips to Eli's forehead, tears mixing with rain. "I love you," he said, the words raw and fierce. "I'll always love you." Headlights flooded the alley, and Sam shouted for help as paramedics rushed toward them. They pulled him away, their hands efficient but cold as they worked on Eli. Sam stood there, rain-soaked and trembling, watching as they loaded Eli onto a stretcher. He wanted to believe they could save him, that love could be enough to pull Eli back from the edge. But the blood on his hands told a different story. At the hospital, the waiting room was a blur of fluorescent lights and sterile smells. Sam sat alone, his clothes still damp, staring at the floor where Eli's blood had dried on his hands. Eli's parents arrived, their faces tight with grief and something else, blame. Maybe. Or shame. They didn't speak to Sam, didn't even look at him. He didn't care. All that mattered was Eli. When the doctor came out, her face was grim. "He's in surgery," she said. "It's touch and go. The next few hours are critical." Sam nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He wanted to ask if Eli would wake up, if he'd smile again, but the words stayed trapped inside him. He thought of the letter Eli had written him last summer, tucked away in Sam's jacket pocket even now. Eli had poured his heart into it, words about love and courage and a future they'd build together. Sam hadn't read it in months, hadn't needed to know it by heart. But now, he pulled it out, his fingers trembling as he unfolded the worn paper. Eli's handwriting was messy, full of loops and smudges, but every word felt like a lifeline. "I don't know if I'm brave enough for this world," Eli had written, "but you make me want to try." Sam's chest ached as he read it, the words blurring through tears. He'd failed Eli tonight, hadn't protected him the way he'd promised. But he wouldn't fail him now. He'd stay. He'd fight. He'd be here when if Eli woke up. The hospital clock ticked on, each second a reminder of how fragile time had become. Sam sat by Eli's bedside, the beeping of machines a cruel metronome to his thoughts. Eli was still here, but barely tubes and bandages holding him together. His face pale but peaceful, as if he'd already made up his mind about where he was going. Sam hadn't left the hospital room except to grab coffee from the machine down the hall. Eli's parents had come and gone, their prayers whispered in the doorway before they retreated, unable to meet Sam's eyes. He didn't blame them. Not really. They were losing their son, and Sam was the one they'd always feared would take him away. But he wasn't here for them. He was here for Eli, for the boy who'd taught him that love could be a rebellion, a quiet act of defiance against a world that didn't understand. Days blurred into nights, and Sam lost track of time. He talked to Eli, his voice hoarse from hours of one-sided conversation. He told him about the mural they'd finished together, about the poetry slams he'd drag Eli to in New York, about the life they'd still have if Eli would just open his eyes. Sometimes, he thought he saw Eli's fingers twitch, a flicker of hope that kept Sam tethered to the chair. On the fifth day, Eli woke. His eyes, hazy with pain, found Sam's, and a weak smile curved his lips. "You look like hell," he whispered, his voice barely there, but still carrying that familiar warmth. Sam laughed, tears spilling over. "You're one to talk." He reached for Eli's hand, careful of the four, and held it like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. You scared me, Eli. Don't ever do that again. Eli's smile faded, his eyes searching Sam's. I saw you, he said softly. In the alley. You were my last chance. Sam's throat tightened, remembering his own desperate words, your last chance. He'd meant it as a plea, a demand for Eli to fight. But now, hearing it from Eli, it felt like something else he had promised. A tether, a reason to keep going. Recovery was slow, and the hospital room became their new sanctuary. Eli's strength returned in small bursts, enough for him to sketch again, his pencils scratching out fragments of their story on hospital napkins. Sam read to him from the poetry book they'd shared in the barn, his voice steady even when his heart wasn't. They didn't talk about Caleb or the knife or the hate that had nearly torn them apart. They didn't need to. Their love was the answer, the defiance, the healing. When Eli was strong enough, they left Springdale. Not for New York. Not yet. But for a quiet town a few hours away, where no one knew their names. They rented a small apartment with a window that caught the morning light. Perfect for Eli's painting. Sam found work at a bookstore, slipping poems into Eli's sketchbooks when he wasn't looking. They built a life. Not the one they dreamed of in the barn, but one that was theirs, imperfect. Hard one. And real. The scars remained, physical and otherwise. Eli's side ached when it rained, a reminder of the night they almost lost everything. Sam still woke from nightmares, his hands reaching for Eli in the dark. But they had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. One evening, as the sun set over their new home, Eli hung a canvas on their wall, painting of two figures under a starry sky, hands intertwined, a world of color bursting around them. This is us, he said, his voice steady now, no longer a whisper. This is what we fought for. Sam pulled him close, his heart full. It's more than I ever hoped for, he said, and he meant it. They'd faced the worst of the world and come out stronger. Not because they were fearless, but because they'd chosen love over fear. Over and over again. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, painful, and scarred, but it was theirs. And as they stood together, watching the stars through their window, Sam knew that no matter what came next, they'd face it side by side. Because love, real love, wasn't just about surviving. It was about choosing to live. Every single day. For each other.